Welcome back, everyone, to our action movie podcast. I'm Zane Simon. I'm joined by my co-host Troy. We are here to talk about our favorite action movies. Each week, picking a important cinematic theme in film history and using it to choose a movie that reflects, something, an action film that we find personally important and valuable and meaningful in film history. So, Troy, thanks for joining me again. And how do you feel about this week's Rags to Riches theme?
You know, Zane, I really like it. I know that there's some flaws in telling these sorts of stories, but it's really important to have aspirational tales like this and to really show that while there are challenges to social mobility, that there are things to aspire to. There are people who do make it, and it's really worth celebrating those stories.
Well, I was gonna this is something too that is across all genres and across. You can go back to movies like My Man Godfrey, or up to like Scarface in the '80s, and on and on. These are The Jerk. It's across like all these different types of movies out there that tell this rags to riches story, and there's so much to choose from. It's something that's really it is present across all these different forms.
Yeah, and it's a story that we're told from a very young age when, obviously parents are trying to teach us to reach for the stars and that we can do anything we set our mind to. And you get things like even children's movie classics like Aladdin. That I grew up on that, and there is no more clear rags to riches than, he's homeless and ends up as royalty.
So on that note, then, I'm really interested to hear, what is this movie that you have chosen this week?
The movie I have chosen is it's a personal favorite. And again, I'm going a little bit more modern here. This movie is from 2004, and it is called Kingsman: The Secret Service.
God. What? No, you're supposed to choose a good, meaningful movie about rags to riches, and what was that? What was your choice again? Just
The Secret Service.
Why? Okay.
Have you seen it?
No, I have not seen.
Then why are you reacting like this? You don't know what's in it.
I've seen trailers, I've seen things. I'm just saying it's.
You know what they say, Zane? You never judge a book by its trailer.
God, please tell me why Kingsman: The Secret Service is a great rags to riches action movie that is near and dear to your heart.
So I'm gonna start with just running you through the first two scenes to sort of establish this universe, and from there we'll really get into the themes of how our protagonist really overcomes a lot of issues of class mobility. And
does he become a Kingsman?
Look, we'll get there.
Okay.
One of the reasons why I did choose this is there's a lot of positive messaging during his transformation into this. But first, let's just sort of establish the world we're in. So, opening shot, there is a helicopter flying over the desert, fucking up a vaguely Middle Eastern building. We have explosions in the first minute. It's awesome.
Bombing poor people already. I mean, I'm just. So is it that the movie creates the rags? Is that how we're supposed to get to the riches?
Well, I mean, maybe that's a different story. That's a sub.
Okay. So we got the helicopter bombing people.
Yeah, and then you pull into the building and you see a bunch of tactical army guys, like head to toe, body armor, guns, all that. And you see that they are interrogating a man tied to a chair, and he's wearing a turban, so you know he's the bad guy. And
of course.
yeah. Somehow, before they really get anywhere with him, he pulls the pin on a grenade with his mouth, and one of the tactical dudes shoves the other guy away, dives on this, definitely a terrorist, we know. And
well, he's blowing himself up. So clearly a turban and blowing himself up. He might as well just have written terrorist on his forehead.
Yeah, and he's in the desert. I mean, we know exactly who this person is.
All right. So
our special ops guy gets just blown to chunks. It's sad. We don't like it. Everyone else takes off their mask. They have humanizing moments. And that's when we meet one of the primary characters of this, played by Colin Firth, going by code sign Galahad.
In what is probably a personal career low light for Colin.
Again, you haven't seen this movie, Zane. I would disagree.
I'm just thinking of, like, this is a dude who's in Pride and Prejudice. He's Mr. Darcy. Mr. Darcy is out there, like, watching a dude get blown up by a grenade in his mouth.
He gets to do some really interesting stuff later in the movie. And also, weird that you don't go for Love Actually as his highlight, but,
I don't watch movies like Love Actually. I'm here doing a action movie podcast. I'm not well, okay, so I talked about Pride and Prejudice. You know what? Let's just move on. Let's move on.
Yeah, so that scene's done. Colin Firth says, he's going to tell the family, and it sucks. He shows up at their house and tries to tell this now very recent widow, we can't give you any details. It's a highly covert thing, but I'm very sorry. He's very empathetic. And then says, if there's anything we can do for you, call the number on this token, and basically saying, like, anything you ask, we'll pull it off. She's distraught. She doesn't want that. She wants her husband. So now Colin Firth decides, well, crying woman, I'm going to talk to someone else, like this little kid. It's probably like 7. And it's the young version of our soon-to-become main character named Eggsy.
So in fact, we may be looking at, like, middle class to riches here.
They establish some more. It's definitely at least lower middle class.
Okay. Well, I guess it's a military family, so they're moving around a lot and they're unsettled and.
Yeah, and to be fair, there was a detail where it was supposed to be like the last mission of training. This guy wasn't official yet when he died.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he hadn't gotten like the real king's part of the Kingsman.
Why are they sending a trainee to, like, interrogate terrorists out in the desert? This is very Trumpian thing where they're putting, like, 16-year-olds out of high school in the White House.
Kingsmen go fucking hard. Anyways, so that scene's over, and then now we jump into a very fancy-looking building with, again, someone tied to a chair, but it is Mark Hamill, so we know he's good.
Oh.
Yeah. And he's surrounded by a bunch of vaguely Middle Eastern guys, so we know they're bad.
Of course. Any turbans?
I think there were a couple of Slavic peoples. I'm not really sure.
Okay, no turbans, but certainly some swarthy, like some black facial hair and palish, but not too pale skin.
Yeah, shaved heads, piercing eyes.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So, anyways, clearly bad situation for Mark Hamill. Someone knocks on the door, and it is just a very dapper-looking Englishman, and he just shoots all of the vaguely Middle or Eastern European guys just right in their dang heads. It's great. He's doing all sorts of action movie tricks and sliding, and just takes them all out. He's a real badass. Grabs a glass of whiskey that a guy was about to drop, has a quippy one-liner. It's really fun.
Does he drink the whiskey?
No, he at least sniffs it and mentions the brand and the year that it's from just off that. I think he may take a sip.
Sounds a little high. That sounds a little high-toned for your tastes, honestly.
Well, it kind of is, but
You were able to get through it for all the cool action leading up to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, well, I don't want to just say leading up to it, because the reason why I can't remember specifically if he drinks the whiskey is because before he's able to do much of anything else, there is a lady that appears in the room, and she has prosthetic feet, and she cuts him all the way the fuck in half with her feet. Just one slice, top to bottom. Like, not crosswise, hot dog style. This dude is cut in half, and he peels apart in different sides, and it's beautiful for too long, because she has other shit to do. She starts gathering towels and sheets and covering all the bodies with them, which seems like a interesting ritual of, respect for the dead. Not quite. Next thing you know, she opens the front door and says, "Now everything's clean." And do you want to guess who's at the door?
Is it Colin Firth?
No, it is a beautifully charismatic, speaking in kind of like a high-pitched with a lisp tone, Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh Lord, I remember him now on the poster, and I believe that was like a third of the reason fully that I did not watch that movie was how ridiculous Samuel L. Jackson looked in like any media related to that movie.
Oh, he plays it to part. That normally you would have expected them to cast, like, if it was in the 90s, it definitely would have been like Jim Carrey or Mike Myers. But instead, you get a much more interesting performance out of Samuel L. Jackson. It's actually legitimately good. It builds out his character. And turns out his whole thing is he hates seeing blood. He doesn't like it. He's sorry that Mark Hamill had to see that, but they're going to work together and they're going to make something great.
Oh, so
that's the world we're in.
That's the world we're in. And so this child, I'm assuming he gets picked up into this. He calls the token number, I'm assuming, at some point.
Yeah. I mean, there's some exposition among the Kingsmen. Basically, they're back at home base, kind of establishing what they are. Leader is Michael Caine, and his call sign is Arthur. There's another guy who works there whose call sign is Merlin. They're really just taking all the names from that like 60s Disney movie. That one's kind of old.
King Arthur? You mean the Legends of King Arthur, like the Round Table?
I looked it up. I think it's called The Sword and the Stone.
Do you literally only know the Legend of King Arthur through the Disney movie?
Is there more to it? Was there a sequel?
God. I mean, you've at least seen like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so it's that.
I like the bunny scene.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So their call signs are from the court of Camelot.
That's what I remember the castle being called.
Okay.
Yep. And basically, Michael Caine is just a little bit snobby about it, but it's whatever. So they get through that, and here's where we start to see establishing Eggsy as the rags part of Rags to Riches. He's a young.
What's his name again?
Eggsy.
Eggsy, like eggs?
Yeah.
Or like eczema.
Like, I'm pretty sure it's spelled E-G-G-Y. And they do tease him for it. It's not something that's, just taken as this is a name that you should believe in. He gets ribbed for it.
Okay, so it's part of his rags, in fact, is his terrible ass name.
I don't know if it's his last name.
Or no, his terrible ass name, not last name.
Oh, yeah. No, that's part of it.
Okay.
So he's in a bar and nearly gets in a fight, and his buddy is talking him out of it. Turns out he stole the guy's car keys. They steal his car. They go for a joyride, and it's just some guys having fun in England. Then there's a cat in the street, and he swerves to avoid it and crashes. And, well, now the police are going to get him. He tells his buddies to run. He takes the fall for it. There is honor among these thieves. That's
Wait, so are they thieves or wait? Is this so? This is before he calls to join the service, right?
Correct. When
Okay.
he gets arrested here and has no way out of his interrogation, he pulls out that token, calls the number, says the passcode, which is first he forgets that he has to say it, but the passcode is Oxford's not Brogues.
Wait, Oxford's not bros.
Brogues.
Oh, not brogues. Okay, I feel like that should have been Oxford, not bros. Like,
They explain it later in the film as he is becoming more acculturated by Galahad, that they're referring to the types of shoes.
oh Lord.
And to always go with Oxfords instead of Brogues. When you get the broguing on shoes, it's a little too.
I know you've got a sock fetish. Does that fit into your personal worldview as well?
I believe socks should be loud and shoes should be muted.
Okay, so is this in? I'm not familiar with the shoes. Are the shoes muted enough for you?
Yeah, I think they're very subtle and it's more fashionable.
Okay,
I learned it from this movie.
that's good to know. So at the very least, this movie has provided you with the background, the backbone under which you would make fashion choices like the shirt you're wearing today.
Yes, correct.
All right.
So after that, he just walks out of the police station after he makes that call, and they say, "Oh, it's taken care of." And that's when Galahad, Mr. Colin Firth, is there to meet young Eggsy. And what you see there is very clearly this was meant to be, his dad was a Kingsman. Now he wants to bring Eggsy in. There's a lot going on. But long story short, they end up back at that same bar, and it's the middle of the day. No one else is there. And while Galahad's, talking to him about how well he was doing, basically referencing Eggsy's past, saying, "You were doing well in the military, and why'd you drop out? Why did you end up, fucking everything up?" And Eggsy goes in about how basically his mom lost it. He had to come home to take care of her, and goes off on a pretty justified rant about just cannon fodder for the wars of the rich.
So that seems like that, I guess, would then be sort of the structure. I mean, is this the structure for like how you get the rags? Which, like, what do you feel like really, where does the journey lead him to these riches? Like, what's the concept that makes him then rich as he goes on?
Essentially, pulling himself up by his bootstraps.
Oh, okay. So it's that kind of rags to riches.
And you'll see. The great thing about this scene is the dude he stole the car from and his entire crew come back, and they're ready to fuck up Eggsy, and they don't know who Galahad is, and they don't care. Then Galahad's either going to leave or something, and just says, like, "Yeah, let me finish my Guinness, and then you can solve whatever problems you have with Eggsy." They say something insulting to him, and he's leaving, at which point Galahad locks the door, says, "Manners maketh man," and beats the shit out of everybody with an umbrella. Also, it's a spy umbrella.
Sounds like it's like some sort of like Jeeves and Wooster weird, like, hyper masculine fever dream thing going on.
I'd say that's essentially accurate. So anyways, just to keep the story moving, there's a guy threatening Eggsy to tell him, "Oh, who was with you in the bar? Who fucked up all these guys?" And he's threatening to murder him, and Eggsy won't give it up. Again, honor amongst thieves. This guy has a solid moral standing. And long story short, Galahad confuses the people who are. Eggsy just kind of parkours the fuck out of there. And next thing you know, he's at a tailor shop meeting with Galahad and being recruited into the Kingsmen, while also being told a suit is the modern gentleman's armor and the Kingsmen agents are the new knights.
So I gotta ask then, do you feel like, because it is, as you say, it's a pull yourself up by your bootstraps, sort of rags to riches tale. Do you feel like the rags or the riches part are like an affectation or like an actual desire of the character? Does he want to be rich?
It's it's a bit of both, and there's a very material payoff at the end that absolutely wouldn't have been accessible to him as he in the class role where he is initially starting.
Is it cars or women?
Look, you'll find out.
Answer that one question. That's it.
We'll get there. Movies are a journey, Zane. And you always call me impatient.
I'm just saying that, I want a little, I don't need the whole story. I just want to know how rich is he getting here? This lower middle class dude, a bit of a chav, and what kind of, what makes us feel like he's appreciably rich?
I would say that wealth is measured in happiness rather than digits and bank account.
Oh, well, that's just lovely, isn't it? Wealth measured in happiness.
Yeah, I mean, you got to follow your bliss. So
yes, I can understand why that would be your personal philosophy at this moment.
So there's a lot of training, and we don't need to go through each one. Long story short, he keeps doing well based on his own virtues of teamwork and standing up for the crew and doing the same stuff that has really gotten him here so far. All the agents or most of the agents are douchebags with names like, and pissy he didn't go to Cambridge. And then there's one of my favorite things is every agent in training needs to pick a dog to train. And when they train their dog, that's, part of their special agent training. And pretty much everybody goes for a working breed. The other nice agent, Roxy, that we're supposed to like, she gets a poodle, and those are smart. You see somebody else with a German Shepherd, classic military. And Eggsy picks what he believes to be a bulldog puppy, but it's just a pug. And it's a pug. I love it.
Yes, okay. So we have the dog, we have the training, I get this. I mean, it's very much like a rags put in riches, right? Like maybe
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that they eventually get to is Eggsy saying, when are you going to teach me how to speak like a gentleman? Like I have, like you said, sort of like a lower middle class Chav accent. And I actually already pulled this quote because I thought it was a very class positive message. Is Galahad says, being a gentleman has nothing to do with an accent. It has to do with being comfortable in one's own skin. There's nothing noble in being superior to your fellow man. The nobility comes from being more noble than your previous self.
I feel like that My Fair Lady would strongly disagree with that sort of philosophy.
They actually reference My Fair Lady in this movie.
Did they? Have you seen My Fair Lady?
Maybe. I don't know.
See, that's just.
I've seen Pretty Woman. It's kind of the same, right?
It's not. I mean,
look. Have you been to a stage showing of Pygmalion? Stop trying to one up me here.
I'm just saying that my Fair Lady is, it's the classic backbone of the Pygmalion as film. Like that is the center point that you should be going to for movies like this. Is you should know My Fair Lady. Like, sure, it's.
Well, the people who made this movie did, and they worked it in, and I feel like you're coming at me instead of appreciating some really solid filmmaking inspired by the classics.
I mean, just because it includes a nod to the classics does not make it itself a classic. And the fact that you haven't seen any of the classics means that you also have no grounds to make that judgment about how heavy a nod it is, how well it is, how well done it is.
I mean, I haven't seen the classics, but I've seen all the shots Quentin Tarantino stole from them, so I'm close enough.
This is okay. You've seen Quentin Tarantino movies, and that basically means you have an outline of film history.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that all feels right.
Yep.
So
there's some other stuff going on. Samuel L. Jackson being nefarious, finding out he takes like a Swedish princess hostage when she doesn't want to go along with whatever his plan is. Knife legs lady, knife legs some people. And then there's just like some counter espionage between Galahad and Samuel L. Jackson. And I'm rushing through it because there's no way to really describe it in a way that's anywhere near as compelling as watching Colin Firth and Samuel L. Jackson do spycraft.
You have convinced me that I need to at least see what sort of disaster you're pulling me towards. So I will watch it.
Okay.
You know, if you just had sold it to me as My Fair Lady with lots of killing, I think I could be like an all dude My Fair Lady with lots of killing. I can get on board with that.
Well, it's not all dudes. There's Knife Legs Lady. There's Roxy, the other agent. She's a woman.
Okay. A couple of women. I mean, you know, My Fair Lady isn't all women either. It's got dudes in it.
Well, who's going to help him improve?
That's right. Oh, God. Why did I agree to that? I should never have agreed to that sentiment.
No, don't cut that. Nobody cut that. Who's our producer? Molly? Is Molly our producer? Molly, don't let him cut that.
Molly is our producer. So, do you have any final, like, really pointed message about the whole class mobility idea to get through with this that you want me to know?
Yeah. Okay. There's two things that I need to get to in this movie. One is that Samuel L. Jackson's blown up people's heads. That's his plan. He has basically a rage virus that goes out through people's SIM cards in their cell phone. And we get to see him test that. This isn't the class part, but this is by far the best scene in the movie. And I cannot go without telling you about this. It is fan-fucking-tastic. Galahad, he goes there because he saw some pamphlets for this super hateful church. And there's a preacher saying like some Jew N-word kind of stuff, but N-word with like a hard R. And it's not great. He starts trying to leave just as Samuel L. Jackson is doing this test. And it's deliberate. He wants to do the test and mess up Galahad, get him out the paint. And oh boy. So you get like this escalating tone that you can tell is supposed to be like, oh yeah, I know this is the angry thing. And the intro sounds of Freebird. And right as things are hitting a crescendo, there's just like that tone going on, and you know that the song's about to start, and Colin Firth shoots this old lady in the face, and we are off to the goddamn races, Zane. He's just shooting everybody. Everybody starts fighting. He's headshot another, and he's reloading and hitting people with the gun. And he's dropping some double taps and kicking over the pews, and people are getting stuck in the pews, and he's judo throwing people all over the fucking place, doing Wolverine fucking jumps, and people are getting stabbed with shards of the pews and getting slammed into the organ pipes. And then there's like some just fucking chokes, and somebody gets burned with a thurible, and he stops a knife with the Bible. The knife murders that person with the knife that was in the Bible after he takes it out of the Bible, and then somebody has a blowtorch for some reason. I don't know why. A guy has an axe that it was clearly there for firefighting. I mean, he's just still headshotting people. He steals the axe, and Freebird is going through all of this. Motherfucking Freebird solos the whole goddamn time, and it is bonkers. It is fucking insane. It is the best action scene I have seen in the past, I don't know, decade. You got to see this movie. It's amazing, Zane.
I feel like I'm in the video version of the Samuel L. Jackson Experiment at this point.
Yeah, that's kind of it.
Yeah.
But you got to see it. Then Samuel L. Jackson confronts him outside and fucking this.
Okay, well, that...
So after that, Zane, please watch this movie. It's a really good scene.
Okay, I'm not sure about your whole rags to riches presentation here.
That's the last thing I need to get to real quick. So
okay.
after you understand the problem and from there, it goes into pretty much straight action scenes, all that stuff. Invading Samuel L. Jackson's compound, fights with Feet Knife Lady, and a bunch of heads exploding. But as Eggsy's on his way to do all that, he sees the Swedish princess that I had mentioned earlier that was being held captive. And
I don't think you mentioned the Swedish princess, but please do not explain it to me. Just
okay, Swedish princess is held captive. It's a thing. Yep. And he can't bust her out yet. Doesn't have the code for the lock or whatever. And basically says, sorry, I gotta go save the world. Can I save the world? Can I get a kiss? And she looks at him, and in a lovely Swedish accent, I don't do accents, but just picture it in a Swedish accent, she says, yeah, that's quite frankly offensive, but okay. You agreed with an offensive thing I said earlier, so I got to indeed.
You've lowered my entire intellectual capacity by several IQ points. So this is my result.
Yeah. So he says, if I save the world, can I get a kiss? She says, if you save the world, we can do it in the asshole. So anyways, really good action stuff. Heads blowing up, like a lady dying. Nice feet. Eggsy takes off one of her feet and chucks it at Samuel L. Jackson like a javelin and kills him with that. And that's how it ends. Then he just takes some champagne, goes back to the jail cell, and meets up with the Swedish princess. And we end on a shot of her just naked from the waist down, rolling over onto her stomach.
Oh, God. Okay. And I'm starting to get a very clear picture of why you chose this movie and why you love it. And
yeah, this guy went from, it's a very started from the bottom, ended up in Swedish royalty's asshole.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's a rags to riches and more of mom's house to like porn sex.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, look, dude, if you bone your way into really any sort of, yeah, I'd say that's rags to riches. It's, again, you agreed from the start that Aladdin was a rags to riches story. And what did he do besides go from homeless to lying to boning a princess?
He got a lot of money, too. Like, he actually got rich, you know? I mean, I took this whole thing a little more seriously, and I really tried to do something about somebody who actually makes money doing action stuff. So,
but what makes people happier? Money or butts? Which maybe that's a thing that we're going to discover when we go through your classic cinema. Zane, okay. What did you bring to the table?
So for me, I brought a director I would hope that you're familiar with, although I mean, and he's certainly made stuff that you should be familiar with. He's made some trash. Okay. But I have brought a film from the great action director, Walter Hill, the 1973 film Hard Times.
Okay.
And Walter Hill, he's one of the all-time great action directors. Started on he had a classic run in the 70s and up to the early 80s where he made everything from The Warriors to 48 Hours. And it's just a bunch of cool, fun action movies. And in the middle of them, Hard Times may be the best of all of them. It's probably my favorite.
Okay.
And I will preface this by saying, for as awesome and classic and high-toned as Hard Times is, it may be the best MMA movie ever made, which is not a high bar.
Yeah.
It may be the only good MMA movie ever made. How's that?
All right. When you say things like it's the best MMA movie.
No, I know. I realize that's like saying that, you know, that I jerking off is the best sex you've ever had.
Well, for some people it is.
Yeah.
And also, if we're talking about the best MMA movies ever made, you absolutely need to see the movie Tekken.
I, I'm sure we will get there. I'm sure
Because
you will pull me
luminaries
into
such as
that fresh hell at some point.
you get
But
Conley, Roger Huerta, good movie.
so
Anyways, back to Hard Times.
Hard Times. It's an underground boxing movie, basically,
Okay.
and it stars Charles Bronson and James Coburn. Bronson, of course, one of the all-time classic action movie actors,
Right.
and Hill has this great sort of talent for making movies in which he really writes the script to the ability of the actors. So the fact that Charles Bronson is himself not really a great leading man actor at all. I don't know how many Charles Bronson movies you've watched, but
A
he
couple.
he can
I watched the
often
killy
be
parts.
he can often be pretty dull if he's trying to carry a movie.
Okay.
Walter Hill actually does a really great job writing a movie down to Bronson, where it's just like, he's got a handful of lines that he delivers throughout the movie, and mostly he's there to look awesome and be awesome.
So it's kind of like when people write a role for Marky Mark where they just need him to look confused a lot.
Yes, exactly like that. And co-stars James Coburn, who carries most of the acting work. And if you haven't seen James Coburn in anything, he's the best. He's in like the classic Sergio Leone Western, Duck You Sucker. And he's in one of my favorite comedies, The President's Analyst, and a whole bunch of other awesome classic movies.
Stuff that I've definitely heard the names of before.
Yeah, okay. Well, I know it's not The Kingsman or Tekken, but here.
I guess what I'm picking up is he's no Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh, God. Yeah, no. This is very true. I mean, other than several melanin differences, James Coburn, not Samuel L. Jackson. Very, very true. True statement.
Oh, that reminds me. A question that I realize that I need to ask you every time for this podcast now. Is this movie in color?
Yes, this movie is in color. It
All
is
right.
in color. It's set in the Depression in like 1930s New Orleans. And Charles Bronson walks off a box. He's hopping a boxcar. He's a boxcar hobo. And gets off at a train station in some small town with $6 in his pocket and finds a local underground boxing match and talks one of the promoters working it, James Coburn, into getting him into a fight where he bets all $6 he has on himself and knocks the dude out with one punch. And suddenly he's got $12. And
Okay.
James Coburn is like, "Oh my God, you're amazing. We need to take you to New Orleans and make some real money."
Okay, so this is kind of just like a knockoff of Snatch.
Well, I mean, other than the whole like relative timeline, I mean, I guess if you see time not as a continuum, but as a series of moments that can be organized in any order at all, yes, it's a knockoff of Snatch.
Okay, we didn't really establish this when we were talking about the podcast, but I'm a firm believer that time is nonlinear and the world is flat.
Yeah, okay. That fits with everything else I know. So.
Okay, so also, how much Boxcar Bum slang?
Sorry, what was that?
Do we get any good Boxcar Bum slang before the fighting?
No, there's, like I say, they don't. Bronson does not get a lot of lines to work with because he's not the best actor in the world. We don't want him really like getting into the depths of like trying to be a caricature. That wouldn't really work. I mean, one of his best performances is Once Upon a Time in the West, where he literally spends most of the line not talking and just playing a harmonica.
All right. So he's a man from the wrong time. He should have been before movies had sound.
Yes, he would have been a great, great silent movie heavy.
Okay.
But Charles Bronson, and then they get down to New Orleans and they immediately find the top promoter there, who's this rich asshole who walks around in fur coats all the time, and his big angry skinhead boxing champion who looks whole hell of a lot like Bald Bull from Punch Out.
This sounds very contemporary.
I mean, I'm giving you the illusions I can make. You're the one who thinks it was made after Snatch, so I can understand why you would think it'd be contemporary.
No, not just the movie itself, but the idea of a over-the-top, lavish, rich man promoting white supremacist fighters. I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
As much as things change, the more they stay the same.
The more they stay the same. It's a very relatable tale.
Yeah.
And so James Coburn and Charles Bronson. James Coburn has to come up with $3,000, which he borrows most of from Loan Shark. He borrows $1,000 of it from a loan shark, and then suckers some Louisiana hillbillies into an underground boxing match with Bronson to win another $3,000 or $2,000, and they get a $3,000 buy-in to set up and promote this big boxing match between the skinhead and Charles Bronson. His character's name, I should start referring to him by his character's name. His character's name is Cheney. So,
okay.
You know. And Coburn's character is Speed. And
all right. Look, I don't want to set like a firm policy for how we refer to characters, because I just mixed up Galahad and Samuel L. Jackson for a solid too long. But I think we should just go with whatever's the most recognizable.
All right. So, Coburn and Bronson, Cheney and Speed, they get their buy-in. They set up this boxing match, and Charles Bronson beats the piss out of the dude and wins a whole bunch of money, wins $5,000. And so does Coburn, because they split it 50-50. And so Coburn's got $5,000 too. And Coburn, of course, immediately goes and plays dice and pisses it all away. And he owes a bunch of money to loan sharks because he had to take out a huge loan to get the money to front the match. And it
Real
forces.
Quick, before we move on, this is. I'm not saying that you should necessarily change anything in your movie selection, but right now you are 2 for 2 with Nazis getting punched in your movie.
This is true. I mean, I think it's a strong theme to draw on for action movies across any era. Obviously you have to start with like the 30s or 40s, but that's pretty much the start of, you don't get many action movies pre-1940.
Yeah, and I'm starting to feel like, if you had come into this thing with the argument of you have no idea how many Nazis get punched that you haven't seen, I would be very receptive to that. Like, fair.
So they get Bronson. He doesn't want to box anymore. He made a bunch of money. That was his whole goal, was to go from rags to riches. I mean, that's I worked with this theme. I really felt this theme deserved careful attention, from hobo to rich man, literally.
I believe I chose a movie that had nuanced class politics, where you're using very judgmental terms like hobo and hillbilly.
You know what? I'm calling it like I see it. I'm trying to be plain here, and okay. I'm trying. Hey,
it's action movies.
Yeah. So Bronson wants to be done, but he's the only guy that can save Coburn, because the rich dude pays off Coburn. He kidnaps Coburn and makes a deal with the loan sharks that he'll pay off Coburn's debts if Coburn can convince Bronson to fight. And if Coburn can't convince Bronson to fight, he'll kill him.
That's not a good situation.
Yeah. So it forces Bronson to get back in there, and he's got to fight. And they bring down this slick boxer from Chicago to fight Bronson. You're from Chicago, aren't you?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Drill noise.
Oh, Lord. I see. I don't even know if that would have been. I don't even know if that's worse than having thought that you might be from LA. But it's certainly you're not working on the best of the best bases here for hometowns.
I mean, look, I don't know what your view of Chicago is, but to me, it is a wonderful city built on just backbreaking segregation.
Oh well, yeah, that is very, very true. I was gonna just say it's my view of Chicago is mostly white dudes who talk a lot like you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, but anyway, so obviously Bronson wins. They win the money. He walks off. There's some like secondary crap where he kind of shacks up with this woman whose husband's in prison, and she's kind of not really a prostitute, kind of, but the moment that she like wants anything more out of Bronson than that, he just leaves her.
Okay.
And he gets a cat, and he's hanging out with the cat for a while, and then
Went from pussy to pussy.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. I suppose.
The way you
that's one of the many ways you could frame that. And yeah, that's it. Like, it's a very straightforward rags to riches story about a boxcar boxer who goes up, and wins a whole bunch of money in New Orleans in the Depression.
Wait, how much money did he?
I think so he bet in the final fight, he bet $5,000 on himself, and I think he probably got like, I want to say like 15,000 back, maybe.
Okay.
At least ended up with 10 grand. But it's the Depression, and he started with $6. I mean, let's see. Let's say he ended up with $10,000.
Yeah, we really got to get some inflation information to see what this ends up like. Because to me, it sounds like your idea of rags to riches is a guy went from homeless to having a cat. But you can do that when you're homeless. It's actually easier.
So it would be $150,000 in today's money.
Okay.
Out of $6. Or
yeah, okay. That's pretty solid. Is he happy at the end?
Yeah, I think he's happy.
I mean, is he smiling?
Well, he's Charles Bronson, so he doesn't really get a lot of facial features. He's smiling. He's smirking.
Oh, all right. I mean,
so $6 would have been $84. So he started with 84, ended up with 150 grand.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm not going to defend his investment strategy, but it worked out.
It's a solid action foundation for making money. I mean, it's either that or safe cracking, and I almost chose a safe cracking movie, but I felt like this was more firmly, a really rag.
You work within the institutions of society to advance. Yeah. That's kind of what we're going for.
Yeah, he boxcar homered his way to fortune.
Yeah, and a cat.
Yeah, and a cat.
And a woman who doesn't really care about him.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it's not I'll admit, it's not the Swedish princess. So you got me there.
Right. To me, that seems. Did he at least look excited to put it in her butt?
I don't even think it came up. I don't think, like, Coburn got to visit a whorehouse, and the prostitute there he asked her how it was afterward, and she was like, "Oh, you were great, honey," and he just responds, "Yeah, that's what I thought you'd say."
Yeah, I mean,
but that's about as much sex talk as there really is in the movie.
That doesn't sound like great sex.
It does not sound like great sex. I will say that. I will say this though. So one of the people they pull in is a opium addicted doctor who's there to like treat Bronson for any post fight injuries he might get, and like, you know, just kind of keep him in fighting shape.
All right.
And Bronson asks him about his opium addiction and why he got kicked out of med school, and the doctor says, "Some are born to fail; others have it thrust upon them." It's very much like that kind of movie. It's all about the sort of cynicism of.
It's a movie about failure and like the one lone light of financial success within that.
And like the dude who doesn't fail because he sticks to what he's good at and he doesn't let anything else distract him. He doesn't let the women distract him. He doesn't let the, con men distract him, anything else. He's very much of his own person.
All right, that makes sense. So since we're talking about drugs back in olden times, was cocaine still a thing that people just had around in the 30s?
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. I don't know if when they started really cracking down. I would assume that cocaine, that the whole like the do all the drugs fad was probably getting cracked down on pretty heavily by then, because like in the 20s and 10s and like 1900 to 1920s, that was just like the drug America, where you would send a gift basket of hard drugs to soldiers in World War I, to like, you're fighting at the front, here's some heroin and some cocaine. Like, that's why it's called heroin, is because it's a brand name. It's like aspirin. It was heroin, like a heroic woman.
Right. And I'm looking this up right now. Legal cocaine quantities did not decrease until the Jones-Miller Act of 1922. Okay.
Yeah, so by the 30s, cocaine was not around.
Yeah.
Or it was not. It was around, but it wasn't super legal.
I just always wonder, and I'm glad that this movie didn't have to address that, but can you imagine trying to have a fucking conversation? Everybody's on blow. There's no way to talk. That's fucking miserable.
No, well, have you at some point? And I don't know if you've read books or like, you see like movies about.
You don't know if I've read books, Zane? You don't think I've read a book?
No, I don't. But
I have one somewhere.
Look, a massive collection of like Playboy magazines does not count as a book.
I found a
but like, if you watch a movie that's like really well set in the 20s, if you've ever heard 20s people talk, especially the high class slang was all fucking over the place. Like, they talk like they're on drugs.
Yeah, because they probably were.
Yeah.
It's anytime someone talks about using a time machine for anything, I'm just like, drugs are fun, but everybody else on drugs is significantly less fun.
So, yeah, I mean, I feel, drugs aside, I feel like I've at least hit a solid note, Rags to Riches. I'm less sure about your note, but I'm willing. You've given me enough to think about that I'm willing to test it out. I'm willing to try this Kingsman journey that you've put me on.
Oh my god, dude. When they get to the church, just like strap yourself right the fuck in. Put Molly in a different room, just in case you don't know what's going to go down. You will black out and wake up just covered in fluids that you can't even recognize.
This sounds way less. Okay, see, that sounds a little less fun than it initially did. I don't know that I need to wake up covered in anything.
Well, it's like the Futurama line of like, why am I naked and sticky? Did I miss something fun?
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
Okay, a Futurama reference does pull me right back in.
All right.
That's fair. Well, on that incredibly high-toned note, we will be back in just a few days with another mini-sode to recount the amazingness that has been Troy actually watching a good movie and me watching whatever horrible, awful experiment he's put me up to.
Also, extended discussion of cocaine.
And potentially an extended discussion of cocaine. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and join us next time on our action movie podcast, which will eventually need an actual movie podcast name. So,
yeah, tell us in the comments there's probably comments on this thing, or hit us up on Twitter. Where can people tell you the names that they want to hear?
You can find me on Twitter at TheZaneSimon. You can find... Can they find you on Twitter, or do we need to set up a Twitter account for the show? Probably that.
We should probably set up one for the show, but if they just want to hear me and my theories about whether time is linear, cocaine is good, or the earth is flat, then you can find me at PDLMMA on Twitter.
All right. On that note, thanks, everyone, and we will talk to you soon.